Level, level, level. Get your adverbs here. Remember that I put the slate under the couch.
Okay. And welcome into the Rowdy Studios. My name is Bass Masters. That's Buzz Cutler. We're talking NASCAR racing. What did we learn, Buzz Cutler, from the Lennox Industrial Tools 301?
Well, we learned a lot of things. Let's just go person by person, team by team, starting with Stewart Haas Racing. Not only their first qualifying front row in team history, but their first 1-2 finish in team history. This was great for Ryan Newman. Now he has a win to his credit, and since he's hanging out down towards the bottom of that top 10, that win might come in handy.
Doesn't get much better for Stewart Haas Racing. I mean, to watch your cars go 1-2 and Tony Stewart, they needed this run. They needed this run to prove they could make the chase. Now they're tied with Denny Hamlin, 82 points. They're in 11th, but they're closing in on the chase. So this was a very, very important run and a big run. Ryan Newman said so after the race.
Obviously, it was a good gainer today in all respects from the points, but getting that bonus point, that bonus win, that's huge. And yeah, this is a really good weekend for me in my career. Now I know what Kyle Busch feels like some weekends.
But Tony Stewart still needs a win.
Tony Stewart needs a win. Now you wonder if he could get it at Richmond. As strong as he was at New Hampshire, you wonder if Tony could win that race at Richmond leading into the chase.
Right, or the Brickyard. He's won at the Brickyard before. That's coming up.
And that's a flatter track, even though the speed's obviously much different there.
Right, so I mean, it is summertime. It is the traditional time when Tony Stewart gets hot. And, perhaps July, perhaps New Hampshire was an indicator of things to come.
All right, what's the next one you got there on your list?
Kyle Busch.
Yeah, he comes in with a points lead, has a great Saturday, winning the nationwide race, 100 NASCAR wins in the 3 National Touring Series. All-time nationwide wins leader tied now with Mark Martin, 49 victories. But Sunday was a big letdown. Apparently, Cutlery, he cooked the bead on his tire, and that's why it blew and he hit the wall, finishes 36 and falls all the way to 5th in the point standings after coming in with the lead. So here's my question to you. Can we attribute that tire problem at all to the way Kyle was trying to get through the field? Was he being too aggressive with his brakes and generating too much heat?
Kyle Busch, too aggressive?
I know.
That's crazy talk. Kyle Busch would never drive aggressively. I think it probably could be in part his fault. It's hard to say.
Yep.
We don't have all the information, but it could have been that he was a little too heavy on the brake. He was trying to do too much too fast.
It was still pretty early in the race.
For me, though, it's like this whole 100 wins thing is overblown. I don't care. The whole, leader, all-time wins leader in Nationwide Series, that's great, Kyle. I hope that keeps you warm at night. But let's put your focus where your focus should be, and that's in winning a Cup championship. Do you really want to go down in history as the guy who had more nationwide wins than anybody else? I don't care.
You don't want that to be your claim to fame
if
you have the talent level that Kyle Busch has.
Indeed.
All right, now let's talk about a guy maybe in contrast to Kyle Busch. Not Jimmie Johnson, but Dale Earnhardt Jr. Dale Earnhardt Jr. needed a good run at New Hampshire, didn't really get it, didn't really have a strong car all day, finished 15th, and now he's in 9th, passed by Ryan Newman. He watched the guys behind him in the point standings, immediately behind him in the point standings, Ryan Newman, Tony Stewart, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished 1, 2, 3. He's now 7 points from being out of the chase.
If I remember correctly, 6 races ago at Pocono, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was in 3rd.
Yep.
Over the course of 6 races, he has fallen to 9th, and now he is the only driver in the top 10 without a win to his name. I was in the Rowdy chat room a couple of races ago, and somebody said, Junior's not going to make the chase. I said, of course Junior's going to make the chase. Look how strong he's been this season. It's not so cut and dried now. I'm not as confident.
We've seen teams that have bad luck finishes, and Junior's had a couple of those, and then that starts to turn into just poor finishes. One thing he said after the race, which I think is encouraging to Junior fans, he's not panicking.
15th ain't awesome, but certainly better than what we've been putting on points-wise. So, and I just got to stay calm and take what the heck I can get.
All right, let's talk about Jimmie Johnson, Junior's garage mate, his teammate. He came back to finish 5th, but once again, Buzz Cutler, he had to overcome pit road issues.
And he was frustrated, and seeing a frustrated Jimmie Johnson is not something we're necessarily used to. I'm starting to wonder if Chad Knaus's strategy about not having a set over-the-wall crew, right, and naming the roster week to week is backfiring a little bit. It's not building team cohesion. It's sort of maybe freaking everybody out a little bit. They're not working out their timing and rhythm as a team, right? These guys have set plays. They call audibles.
Right. I mean, you talk to any person on a pit crew and they'll tell you it's a very team-oriented activity. It's not like you're just doing your job and not worrying about anybody else. And I agree with you. Obviously, one of the things you want to do when you have the system that Chad employed this year is keep everyone on his toes. But could you take it too far and wrap them a little bit too tight? Now they're so nervous about making mistakes because they don't want to get booted out the next week. So maybe that system isn't the greatest thing. They had problems last year. This was maybe a way to address it, having to earn your position every week. I agree with you. It's a question mark, at least now, as to whether or not that's a great way to go. And maybe what they need to do is settle on a troop before we get to the chase.
I would think so. I think they need to name a standing pit crew sooner than later.
Okay. Anybody else on our list?
We were going to talk about Denny Hamlin.
Well, look, Denny Hamlin, you got to like what you see out of Denny Hamlin coming home third in that race. This is a race where he wasn't really a factor for the win, but it's a great track for him. And he has problems midway through the race, overcomes those to finish third. So I think you have to feel pretty good if you're the 11 team.
That's all good. But again, this is a track that you would expect Denny Hamlin to perform well at, that it would have been a huge disappointment and perhaps a little bit of a surprise if he hadn't gotten at least a top 10 finish at this track. And yes, he got a top 5. I want to see how he performs at some of the downforce tracks that we have left before we get to the chase. Off the top of my head, I can't even name what those are. But, I expected Denny Hamlin to be strong at New Hampshire. Let's see how he does at tracks that maybe aren't as much in his wheelhouse.
If you're waiting for him to be back in his form from last year, his 2010 form, I think you're still waiting. But he's made progress to that end, and now I'm a little bit... And look, he's in the danger zone as far as missing the chase. I mean, we can't forget that either, because mistakes can happen. They don't even have to be your mistakes that can cost you a ton of points. I mean, we've seen that with Dale Earnhardt Jr. If you finish in the 40s, it's practically like you didn't even race.
Well, and
so those bad finishes can really, really sabotage your chances when you're in the kind of position that Denny Hamlin's in. However, I think he's fast enough, certainly, to make the chase now.
Well, and with David Reagan in 13th with a win, the 11th and 12th place finishers in the rankings aren't both going to make the chase.
On points.
On points. Now, Denny has that win, so if he falls back, he and Reagan will make the chase, but not so with Tony.
Well, he and Reagan would make the chase if the chase started today. And finally, are you concerned at all about Richard Childress Racing?
You
expect Clint Boyer to be good here. You expect Kevin Harvick to be good here. Jeff Burton was up front some. Clint Boyer was up front some, but they didn't get the finishes that you would hope for. And Clint Boyer, you talk about a guy who needs a win. You talk about a guy in the danger zone trying to cling on to a chase spot. He's not in the chase right now.
I'm not sure that he's a factor anymore when it comes to making the chase. I think there are guys who are fighting for that chase position. He doesn't seem, not that he's not fighting, but he doesn't seem to be given the equipment to be able to launch a decent fight. I think Clint Boyer at this point, it's hard to see him in the chase. Second week in a row, Richard Childress Racing hasn't even shown up.
Well, I think you'd have to be a little more encouraged if you'd seen a bit more speed. And we saw some. Going to Richmond if you're Clint Boyer. You go to Richmond needing a win to make the chase, and you're Clint Boyer, you might feel like you could get it done there. So it could be interesting if Tony Stewart needs a win, if Clint Boyer needs a win to get into the chase when we get to Richmond. That race could be very interesting. All right, that's our take on the Lennox Industrial Tools 301 from New Hampshire. We've got an off weekend coming up, our last of the season, before we head to the Brickyard.
Indeed.
So for Buzz Cutler, my name is Bassmasters. We will see you next time.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.